Hi, everyone. My name is Artha Vatal, and I'm a high school student with an interest in the financial field and financial literacy. I started this podcast to help people gain financial knowledge and help people all around the world grasp a better understanding of the financial field. To help me out with this podcast, here with me is Ajay Bhootra. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Bhootra for being on this podcast and giving up his time and expertise. Now, I will pass it on to Mr. Bhootra for the first question, which is, can you please introduce yourself and your field of work? And can you describe a little bit of what you do in that field?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm a finance professor, and I have a PhD in finance. A PhD usually people do to train to get into academia, although some people do get into industry as well. But I'm a finance professor, and as you know, professors teach, right? So that is one important part of the job. So I teach a variety of finance classes. I also do research in investments area. So that is the area that I sort of focus on for my research. Research is basically coming up with new ideas, and usually in finance we test it with data and then try to publish that research to share with others. So research is another part of the job, and then since I work at a university, university is just like any other organization, and university needs to be run, and professors contribute to running the university in a variety of ways. So those are some of the things that I do as a professor.
Yeah, nice. Again, this question is mainly for, people watching your podcast and they want to indulge in that field as well. They want to do what you do. So it can help them gain a sense of like, oh, this is what I want to do?
Sure. Yeah.
The second question is, what really sparked your interest in joining the field? And can you share a little backstory on like how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so my background is actually in engineering. My undergraduate degree is in engineering, and then I got that in India, and then I came to US for grad school. And during that time, I was taking couple of finance classes, and finance seemed pretty interesting to me. I mean, there was a lot of applied stuff rather than theoretical stuff. Finance involves working with a lot of real world data, so that was the interesting part for me. So that's where I thought of getting like advanced degree in finance, and I decided to get my PhD at that point. So that in nutshell is how I got to where I'm today.
Yeah, yeah, nice. And then the third question, which kind of relates to the second question as well, is what are some like key skills or like qualifications that you had that really helped you advance in that career? And like, I guess, what are some obstacles that like you overcame to really get to where you are today?
Yeah, so in terms of skills, I would say because finance is very quantitative, you need good quantitative and analytical skills. You need to have this sort of interest in analyzing data and looking for some patterns, some new stuff in the data that you can explore deeply. You need good presentation skills, of course, because teaching is part of the job, and you also present your work in front of audience. So you need to be able to present your work well. Now, presentation, of course, is for a limited audience. Your broad dissemination of your work is through writing, right? So one of the important things is to be able to write down your ideas, your analysis, whatever work you have done in a way that is readily accessible to a broad audience. So written communication skills are very important as well. You need to pay attention to details. I guess that applies to a lot of jobs. You're looking for new ideas, and sometimes you need to know what is out there in order to come up with something new, right? So you need to pay attention to what is out there, and just generally I would say that you need to be able to enjoy your work and be passionate about it, because you are of course doing this every day. Teaching it's the same course year after year, it can become a little bit monotonous, to be honest. Research can be a little frustrating because you're trying to publish in journals, and more often than not you will face rejections, and so you need to just keep at it and enjoy the process. I would say those are some of the important skills that you need for this job.
Yeah, especially like enjoying your work, of course, you're doing it every day. I guess that could also apply to like every job. And then one thing which I actually found interesting was the writing for research papers. I never knew, like, usually when people think of finance, it's more, like you said, quantitative, it's more numbers, analytics, analyzing data.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to know like writing plays a role in this as well, especially when doing research papers and all that.
Yeah, and I mean it's not just I would say research papers. Like if let's say somebody is working as an analyst in investment management, right? I mean, they of course have to do all that data analysis, but then they need to prepare their reports and all, right, to convey whatever are the outcomes of their analysis. And preparing that report of course requires good writing skills as well. So I think it is kind of a broader skill that goes beyond writing like research papers. You need that for variety of jobs in finance.
Yeah. And then the next question is, can you describe a typical day in your current job? And what are some challenges? What are some difficulties versus what is something that's fun or that's easy?
There is no typical day as such. I mean, like I said before, the job involves teaching, it involves research, it involves contributing to some university functions, and on any given day, I guess it would be sort of a mix of all of those things, right? Some days are specifically dedicated to teaching, so you devote like majority of your time just working on teaching. And then of course to teach, you need to prepare for teaching as well, so right, so that there's some background prep as well. um, so yeah, within I would say any given week, it's just a combination of all those different things: teaching, research, and then serving on some university committees for a variety of purposes. So yeah.
Is there anything that's like specifically harder than another thing? Or like, is there anything that's like more fun or like?
Well, teaching is enjoyable. I mean, you might think that you're teaching the same class over and over, so it's kind of repetitive. But every time you go in front of a students, it's like a new set of students, and they ask questions. And somebody said, I think it was Richard Feynman, like famous physicist. He said that the best way to learn something is to teach it, right? I mean, if you really want to know something in detail, you should try to teach it, because that way you will in trying to explain it to others, you actually yourself learn a lot. So I actually enjoy teaching. uh, I guess the hard part, research is hard, because most when we are doing research as professors, we are trying to publish in journals, and journals are very selective. I mean, many journals, many good journals have like acceptance rates that are less than 10%. So that means more often than not, your research is going to be rejected. So you spend a lot of time working on research, putting together a paper that you think is like your best work, and then you get these reports saying that it's not good enough, right? So
Yeah.
so that can be pretty frustrating, and that is hard to come up with like new ideas that interest not just you, but people who are actually reviewing your research and the broader audience. So I would say that is pretty challenging, but also pretty satisfying, right? That once you
Yeah.
actually make it, right, that you have your paper accepted at a good journal with which is very selective, then of course that is also I mean, you feel accomplished, and that is also very satisfying too. So
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say is like, rejection, it's hard to deal with it, but it's also a good thing because, it provides you motivation, it provides you to do better next time.
mhm.
And once you actually, get it published, then it's like you feel relief, you feel satisfied. So yeah.
Yeah.
Then the fifth question is, so this is more relating to, I guess, more modern events. And how do you see technology such as AI, machine learning? How do you see that impacting your sector or the financial sector?
Yeah, I mean, AI is already impacting a lot of different areas, right? And finance is no exception. AI has made like big headways into trading, in investment decision making. And the thing with the AI and machine learning models is that they can build complex models, very sophisticated models. They can analyze like huge amounts of data, right? And so, of course, this is something that is a growing area in finance and is getting lots and lots of attention. Uh, One thing with AI, though, is that, as much as this field of finance is quantitative, investing in particular requires a lot of intuition, a lot of judgment, right? It requires creativity and ingenuity. And I think AI cannot completely replace humans in that respect, right? I mean, there will always be role for humans when it comes to using judgment and using intuition. And we don't want AI to get to that level where it can completely replace humans, right? We don't want machines to rule the world. So yeah, I think there will always be a role for humans. AI in the end, I think, is going to be a tool. It will make things easier for us. It will allow us to build like more complex stuff more easily, just like what internet did for us. That is what AI is going to do. But I think there will always be role for humans in finance.
Yeah. Do you think eventually AI will ever like cause unemployment, or do you think it'll always just be a tool in finance?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And there is a lot of discussion about that. There is a lot of concern regarding that, AI can take away jobs and can cause like huge job losses. My view regarding that is that, first of all, that is actually a given that AI is going to lead to job losses. It is going to eliminate jobs. That's for sure. But I think what a lot of people are not recognizing is that anytime there is a new technology, right, it might eliminate jobs with the with automation and whatnot, but it creates whole new jobs, like entire
Yeah.
new industries come into existence. And at this point we cannot completely foresee like what those new types of jobs are going to be. Like, if we look at the history, right, if we go back say 100 plus years, right, at that time farming was like the most common job, right? People worked on farms, like majority of people worked on farms. And these days, of course, I would say maybe 5% of the people are engaged in farming, right?
Yeah.
So of course there are job losses there, right? Some jobs have been eliminated because of technology and automation. But then, at that time, of course, we didn't know about a software engineer, for example, right? There was no such job. We didn't know about smartphones and all the jobs related to that. So, after agriculture and farming, there was industrial revolution, and then people started working in factories. And now there are a lot of people who work in like service jobs, right? Software engineering and web development and stuff like that. These things are not predictable, right? So I think that is what is going to happen, that AI is definitely going to lead to job losses, and there might be some people who are going to be adversely impacted. But in the end, it will make things easier, it will improve productivity, and it will create altogether new jobs. So people will have to sort of adapt and evolve and get those new skills which are needed for those type of new jobs. And that is what I guess we have done over time. If you look at the history, and we have adapted, and we have sort of learned those new skills which are needed for this new job. So overall, I think it is progress, right? It moves in the right direction. I mean, the standard of living, it improves, things get better over time. I mean, we make progress. I think AI will allow us to do that. So yeah, that is my opinion. And I think there are valid concerns regarding unemployment and job loss, and that is going to happen. But there will also be new jobs that would be created.
Yeah, no, that's a really good take on it. I agree with you, especially, new jobs being created. And yeah, that's a really good take on AI and unemployment. And my next question is, what are some common mistakes people make when investing? And can you share some like simple, basic investing tips?
Yeah, that's another good question. I mean, we can talk about investing mistakes like all day. It's it's a topic that has like a lot of different aspects that we can go into. Um, just to keep it brief, I would say one of the common mistakes that I see is that people oftentimes engage in market timing, which is basically trying to get in and out of the markets, trying to predict if the market is going to go up and down, and when to get in, when to get out. Uh, and Unfortunately, people are not good at it. I mean, even the well-known investors like Warren Buffett and all, if you look at how they invest, they don't do market timing. They take like a long-term perspective, and they try to find like good securities that are undervalued and try to sort of invest in those for the long term. Market timing is something that I do not recommend that people do, although it is kind of very hard to avoid it. And just to add more color to this, I was just looking at some data recently. If you look at the stock market performance, right, past 30 years, from 1994 to 2023, the stock market on average has earned like little over 10% per year over that time period, right? And there is a rule of 72 in investing, that you divide 72 by whatever return you are earning, and that is how much time it would take to double your money, right? If you're earning like 10%, then 72 over 10 is little over 7. So in
Yeah.
little over 7 years, you will double your money if you are able to earn 10% every year, right?
Yeah.
So over the past 30 years, the return has been little bit over 10%. And so what that means is that if somebody started out with, say, $100,000 at the beginning of 1994, at the end of 2023, that 100,000 would have grown to 1.8 million, right? 18 times, right? Now that seems pretty impressive, but that is actually pretty normal, because this 10% return that I mentioned, that's not just for this 30 years. If you go back to like 100 years, you will see that on average, the stocks have earned a return of close to 10%, right? 9.8% compounded return. So
Yeah.
that's pretty normal, right? Now, the problem is that the majority of people have not earned that kind of returns, even though they are investing in the stocks. And the reason for that is what I mentioned before, market timing. Like, people try to get in and out of the markets. This performance, right, growth of 100,000 to 1.8 million, of course, it's not like a straight line that every year you're earning 10%, right? That's not the case, of course, right? 10% is just the average. There have been some pretty good years, right? If you look at like the mid 90s, right, that was like the boom time, right? The dot-com boom. Every year from like 95 to 99, we had like returns in excess of 20%, sometimes even more than 30%, right? It was really like a very good time for stock market investors. So we had those type of good years, but then this 30-year period is also include like a lot of bad years. Like we had 2008, which is one of the worst years for the stock market on record. Like the stocks lost like more than 36% in that year. We had 2022 more recently, where the stock market went down by about 18%, right? And many other time periods like that. So basically, to get from that 100,000 to 1.8 million, the assumption is that you are able to stay in the market at all the times,
Yeah.
right? And that means that you are basically going through this ups and downs in the market, right? There is no way to avoid that. Sometimes you can get lucky getting out at the right times and so on, but generally speaking, the only way that you can actually get this type of return is by staying in the market. And so that also, I guess, you can think of as like an investing tip, that you need to understand that stocks are risky, they fluctuate a lot, and you should then figure out how much risk you're willing to take, and you should make your allocation to stocks accordingly, right? You should only invest as much in the stocks that allows you to sleep well, and allows you to take those fluctuations without making any sort of panic decisions, getting in and out of the markets, and missing out on the gains that you might accrue uh, uh, if you're out of the market. So that is I guess would be my investment tip. So
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. I myself know people that like, they'll invest in a lot of money in one stock, and then that stock drops, and that's such a high risk, and it's not worth it when you can, stay in the market for a long time, get that steady rate of return, and it'll get compounded over the years. and you can really earn a good profit out of that.
Right. Right. So when you work in finance, people will oftentimes ask you, is it a good time to invest in stocks? Right.
Yeah.
And the most correct answer to that question is I don't know. Now, people are not expecting that answer because they think you
Yeah.
are the expert. You're supposed to know, right, whether it is a good time or not. But exactly because you know how the stock market works is what makes that the best answer. That you
Yeah.
don't know, like what can happen next year. I mean, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, of course, there are people who will try to predict and forecast, and sometimes they will get it right and so on. But to be able to consistently get it right is very hard. So stock market is all about long term investing. It's not for short term investing. You are taking that risk with the assumption that you can stay in the market for the long term, and in the long term the stock markets have done pretty well, like that 30-year data that I talked about, right? So
Yeah.
that's pretty sort of representative of how the stocks have performed over the long term.
Yeah. And another question relating to the stock market is, what do you think about Nvidia, supermicrocomputer, all these chip industries becoming so valuable in the stock market?
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, I would say that's not surprising. I mean, that goes hand in hand with this new AI wave that we are
Yeah.
seeing, right? I mean, chips are the backbone of computing and AI and all these machine learning technologies. So it's no surprise that Nvidia and all are doing so well. I guess what is surprising is how much well they have done, right, in a
Yeah.
short period of time. One thing I guess related to that is useful to know about stocks, and perhaps people are already aware of that, is that stocks do not always are pricing in what is going on with the company right now, right? That when Nvidia's stock goes up or has gone up so much over the past 5 years, it's not just based on Nvidia's current business and its current revenues and earnings. It's also about expectations, right? The people have big expectations about the role of AI in all different fields, and they believe that Nvidia is going to benefit from that, right? And so oftentimes a big part of the value of any stock is based on expectations about the future, right? Future growth prospects and things like that. And in that respect is what the stock investing becomes tricky, right? That is the hard part, that you can look at the current balance sheets and you can look at the current financial statements to get the current picture of what is going on with the company, but it's hard to predict what can happen in future. Sometimes people get too optimistic, sometimes people get too pessimistic, and sometimes because of that the prices go up too much, sometimes they fall too much. So that is what investing is all about, trying to figure out if the current value of the stock, it justifies the future prospects of the company, not just what is going on with the company right now. And that is what makes investing so challenging.
Yeah, that's all very, very good advice, very valuable information. And kind of relating to advice is my next question, which is, what advice would you give to people trying to enter your field? Maybe, becoming a professor, writing research papers. Is there any specific advice that you would suggest?
Yeah. So, I'm not sure if most of your audience would actually choose this path of going into academia and all. But, as a high school student, I can certainly mention a few things, I guess. Um, I think it's important to learn Excel. It's a very valuable tool. Pretty much everyone who works in finance uses Excel to some extent. So getting proficiency in Excel, I think, is going to be very useful. Not just when you enter the field and start working, but just when you're in college and all, use Excel for a lot of different classes and all. Um, Learning statistics, I think, is useful. Get really good at statistics, because again, finance is a very quantitative field, a lot of data analysis that uses statistics. So having good understanding of statistics and statistical tools is definitely a plus. I would say reading specifically like finance related publications, blogs, websites. Wall Street Journal, I think, is a good one that to read. If you just read Wall Street Journal, the market section and the business sections, you learn a lot. I mean, you might not understand everything what all the articles are talking about, but I think you will get a good handle over time, and that will
Yeah.
develop your understanding of what's going on in the markets and how financial markets work. And then I guess earlier we talked about writing, so I
Yeah.
think writing is an important skill. So I think those are some of the things that are good for high school students in particular, right? But I think these have broader applications, right, for somebody who is not getting into finance, but any area, right? I mean, these skills can be useful. One good thing about finance is that even if you do not end up working in finance professionally, everybody needs to manage their own finances, right? They need to do budgeting, they need to make investment decisions for their own investing. So whatever you learn related to finance, it's not going to be a waste, right? I mean, you will definitely be able to use it for your own personal finance decisions.
Yeah. That's one thing, like, one thing I actually like suggest is that schools make finance mandatory,
Mm-hmm.
because either way, you have to learn how to do your own finances. You have to learn how to, save, budget. You have to learn how to do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So one thing, that's another reason I'm doing this podcast, is to like reach out to people that maybe don't have finance mandatory in their school or don't have the option to learn as much finance. And one thing I liked about what you said was reading. And I know there was a survey done and they interviewed millionaires. And one thing that they all had in common was that they all read books, they all read journals, all of that. And honestly, I think reading is one of the best ways to, learn information, get insight from other people on information. And overall, I feel like it just intrigues you, and
Right.
helps you learn.
Yeah, and I mean, reading, surprisingly, reading actually helps in a lot of different areas. I mean, if you look at some reading related work for elementary school students, those who read a lot actually end up doing well in math as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of famous people, I think Warren Buffett said something like he reads 500 pages every day.
Oh, wow.
Bill Gates reads like hundreds of books every year. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean, you are right. I mean, the reading is important, and it is reflected in what a lot of these people actually do. So yeah.
Yeah. And then the final question to wrap everything up is, what is one last piece of advice that you would give everyone watching on, really how to be successful with your money, how to not go into debt, just how to use your money wisely?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing that we kind of touched upon a little bit earlier is that over time your money multiplies, right? That's compounding, right? Albert Einstein said that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And you need to be invested in the stock market or financial markets in general, investments that produce relatively high returns over long periods of time to allow your money to grow. So harness the power of compounding. That is one thing that I would say. And especially true for young people who have like new jobs and just starting out. You have long time, right? Let's say you're saving for retirement, right, which is like several years away. You have time on your side. You have time to allow that money to accumulate, to multiply, to grow. And so start early and save consistently and take risks, because again, you have the opportunity to take risk. You have the option to take risk because you have long time horizon, right? So for younger people in particular, taking advantage of that power of compounding, I think is really beneficial, because obviously over long periods of time, there's a pretty good chance that you will be able to multiply your returns manyfold, right? Uh, we talked about this little bit earlier too, to diversify, right? I mean, it's investing is as much about risk as it is about return. The focus tends to be on return, but obviously you are taking a lot of risk as well. You need to pay attention to risk, and you need to think about how much risk I can take, right? What is my risk tolerance, and how can I reduce the risk? And one way to reduce the risk is to diversify, right? Not putting all your money in just one or few stocks or one sector, like putting everything in technology stocks. That won't be ideal, right? A lot of people learned it the hard way when the dot-com bubble burst in like 2000, 2001, right? People lost a lot of money because they were heavily invested in this technology stock. So diversification is, I think, important. And just generally speaking, I mean, you have to be disciplined, you have to save consistently, and you need to be patient. You need to be able to take the long-term perspective and invest over several years in order to get those gains from stock market investing. So I guess those would be like some of the pieces of advice that I would offer.
Yeah, I know. This is all really good advice, starting young, especially investing young. And like, when if you invest when you're a teen, by the time you retire at age 65, you can make millions of dollars just from the stock market, just from staying with the stock market, like you said, longevity, long term instead of short term,
Mhm.
and trying not to time the market. All of this is very good advice. And I think that wraps it up. So I would just want to say thank you, Mr. Bhootra, for your valuable time, sharing your knowledge. I myself learned so much from this podcast. I can't imagine how much this will help all the viewers. And, especially when you said the reading, writing part of finance, that was really intriguing to know that. And, this would definitely help out my podcast, all the people willing to gain literacy in the financial world. And I really appreciate everything. And I hope you guys watching have learned a lot from this podcast. And I would like, thank you and like and subscribe.
Okay, thank you, Arthav. It was very nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.